5 signs it's time for you to finally quit alcohol. The first sign is you get aggressive when you drink alcohol, or even worse, you get into fights. Now, before I get into this first sign, I have made this video in the hope that you will see it before it's too late. Getting into trouble with the law from a very early age destroyed some aspects of my life before I was even old enough to understand. Now, maybe if YouTube had been around earlier on when I was younger, or maybe someone had had this chat with me, my life would have probably turned out a lot cheaper and a lot simpler. When I was younger, in my early teens and my early 20s, I got into 2 bad fights. Ultimately, went to prison twice. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but this did cause a lot of disruption in my life, especially in my later ages. Entering different countries, applying for different jobs, trying to get different visas. Had I not got into them fights, life would have been a lot easier for me. Although I didn't get into any fights, after the second time I went to prison, when I started drinking heavily again in my late 20s, I was very close to getting into a few fights. And that is ultimately when I decided enough was enough and I had to stop drinking completely. Now, I know for a fact, had I not gone out on them nights and drunk heavily, then I would have not got into them fights, and who knows, life would have been a lot different right now. But obviously they say not to have any regrets, and maybe if I didn't heavily drink, well, I know for a fact I wouldn't be here talking to you now, sharing my experiences. Now, if you know you've got a problem with alcohol and it's holding you back from reaching your full potential in life, I have been through the similar situation. I've tried and failed so many times. I've been through every scenario and situation you could imagine. I've left a link in the description to book a free one-to-one call with me where we can discuss further. Or alternatively, there's a link for my 7-day video course, which is over 22 modules long. Back to the signs. Sign number 2. Drinking is having an effect on your relationships. Now, this doesn't have to just be with your significant other. It can be with your friends as well. Now, it doesn't just come in the form of arguing with people you care about when you're drunk. It can look like this: breaking plans the following day because you're hungover and not able to go. At the end of the day, we want people to be reliable. And if you can't be reliable to other people, how are they ever gonna be able to trust you? If you were a boss and you had employees and they weren't turning up to work because they were hungover, eventually you'd have to say enough is enough and you'd have to sack them. Now, this is no different in relationships. If you've got a bad partner or a bad friend who continuously lets you down, you've got no choice but to let them go. Now, this brings me to sign number 3. Your performance in work is suffering. It's this simple. If you want to have a good life, you have to be able to earn money, and that means you have to be able to perform in your career or in your business. Ask yourself this question: if you keep missing work or you're underperforming because you're constantly hungover, get real with yourself and say, where is this really going? What do I actually hope to achieve with this inconsistent behavior? Am I really going to be able to attract or provide for my partner and family if I keep this behavior up? Sign number 4. You're using alcohol as escapism. You're using it as a cope for real life situation. Now, this is bad because when you stop drinking, you're not going to know how to deal with the situations that life throws at you, because every time something bad has happened, your girlfriend broke up with you, you lost a job, there was a death in the family, the best way you used to help yourself get over that situation was by going out and having a drink. Ask yourself and be honest with this question: When was the last time you actually dealt with something bad that happened in your life without going and having a drink? If you can't answer that question, you probably know it's time to quit. Next up, you get defensive when somebody asks you to cut down or stop drinking. When I was at my peak drinking days, people would say to me, "Ben, are you really going out drinking again?" And I would get defensive. I would say, "I'm only going out for a few. What's the problem?" I would always just try and play it off as if I was only going out and having one or two drinks. But it was never one or two drinks. It was all or nothing. I would go out, I would binge drink to the point where I'd get blind drunk, I'd get into fights, sometimes take drugs, get into arguments and hurt people who I cared about the most. There would be times when I would go out and I would not go home for a few days. I'd have girlfriends texting me, family trying to get hold of me. I would look at my phone and I would not reply.